In this video, we're going to take a look at the new color grading panel in Lightroom, which was just introduced. So stick around to hear all about it. Well, hi friends, my name is Roger, and today we're talking about the new color grading panel in Lightroom. So in the latest version of Lightroom, which is version 10.0, the former split toning panel has now been replaced by the color grading panel. Now in the past, you were able to apply a color tint to the shadows and highlights in a photo, or in other words, we were able to split apart the highlights and shadows in an image and then apply a tint to them. Now, with the new color grading panel comes the ability to apply a tint to our midtones as well, not just the shadows and highlights, which allows us to really alter the mood of an image in the process. So in this way, the color grading panel is kind of an evolution of the split toning panel. So let's see how this works. So I have this image of a red flower on my screen, and I think what I'm going to do first is convert this image to black and white, because an excellent use for color grading is to bring back just a hint of color to the shadows, highlights, and midtones of a black and white image. So on top of the basic panel, I'm going to click black and white here to convert that image. So now let's expand the color grading panel, and that's directly above the detail panel, so I'll click on the words color grading. So here we see we have three controls, or three color wheels, if you will. The top color wheel is for tinting the midtones of an image. The bottom left is for shadows, and the bottom right is for highlights. So how this works is you click in the color circle on the color that you want. So let's say I wanted an orange color. Notice as I drag around, the color changes. So I'm going to go right about orange here. And again, right now we're working on just the highlights of the image. So once I find the color that I want, we can just click, and that kind of locks it in. So once it's locked in, you can drag along the line, and notice when I click on the little circle here, a line appears, and this allows us to modify the saturation of the tint. So dragging towards the outer edge increases the saturation, whereas dragging towards the inner edge decreases it. Let's modify the shadows next. I'm going to click in maybe more of a red area of the shadows, and I'm going to drag in because I don't want it quite so saturated. By the way, when you drag it around in your circle, holding down your Alt or Option key can slow down how quickly you change colors. So right now I'm changing colors very quickly. But if you hold on the Option key if using a Mac or the Alt key if using Windows and drag, notice that I'm changing colors much more slowly. But I'm going to release it. And I think I'm going to again go with the red, just like so, to the shadows. If you want to reset the effects of a specific color wheel, simply double click right in the center of the wheel. So right now we see our highlights are set to orange. If I double click directly in the center of the wheel, we have reset that wheel, and now no effect is applied. So once we've chosen our color, we can drag the slider underneath to set the luminance of the color. So notice that the luminance is getting brighter as I drag to the right and darker as I drag to the left. So once you've chosen a color, you can hold on the Command key if using a Mac or Control key if using Windows to insert another circle. And here you can drag around the circle and change the color using that same percentage here. I wanted to click right here, closer to the edge, and then I held down Command or Control. Notice that our circle now is using that percentage. And again, we can change the hue of the color simply by dragging around on the circle. So notice that we have this little control outside of this circle. What this does is allows us to adjust the hue. So if you drag around the circle, I'm adjusting the hue, again, just for that percentage that I have locked in. So the outside circle adjusts the hue, and the inside circle adjusts the hue and the saturation. So again, we drag around to adjust the hue, and drag to the left or right along the line here to adjust the saturation. Now on the top of the color grading panel, we have a couple of the icons that allow for different ways of viewing. So the leftmost icon is the default view, which shows us the shadows, highlights, and midtones color wheel at once. So you can modify each of these individually. Then from left to right, we have the shadows, and this displays only the shadows color wheel. And again, we can modify the shadows the same way we did previously. The next icon is the midtones, and the third is the highlights. The last icon is a global color wheel, and this modifies the midtone, shadows, and highlights all at once, so it applies a tint to all of them equally. But let's go back to that first option, all three of our color wheels. Now on the bottom of the panel, we have a couple of additional sliders. We have blending and balance. Blending will blend the colors more towards the shadows if you drag to the left, or more towards the highlights if you drag to the right. Balance controls how much color you add, and again, you can adjust it between the shadows and the highlights. So yeah, that's just a little overview of the color grading panel. And with this panel, you can really create some interesting cinematic effects, such as retro or cross-processing. And this is one of those features in Lightroom with which you can really have a lot of fun experimenting. I actually used to always use the split toning panel as part of my workflow. And from what I've seen thus far, the color grading panel is going to be a welcome addition. So did you like this video? If so, please click the like button below, as that really helps my channel out. And as always, I thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all of your support, and I'll talk to you all in the next video. Roger and out.